Good morning! Jessica here, once again. We've made it! We have made it, friends. You have so wonderfully and faithfully trudged through 3 entire videos about the novel Middlemarch by George Eliot without ever stepping foot into the plot in a meaningful or pointed way, so well done. Today is finally the day. I sort of thought maybe it wouldn't happen. I feel like the universe was conspiring against me. I sliced my finger open on my phone case, of all things, like 3 seconds before I was getting ready to film, and then dumped coffee all over the really cute shirt that I was wearing. So now you get this incredibly professional pink hoodie and neon smiley face band-aid. It's just whatever. It's fine. Like I said, the universe was conspiring against me, but not today, Satan. We're gonna do this. We're going to do it. And even without all of that, I already had a little bit of a like a mental block with this video. I think I was so excited about it. And yes, this is the one I've been looking forward to the most, and naturally I made it last because reasons. But anyway, I just became really intimidated by the thought of screwing it up or not doing justice to such a virtuosic piece of work as this. But I think I finally banished the demons. So here we go. We're gonna talk about the plot of Middlemarch. Finally, oh, I'm so excited. Okay, so my brain decided that the best way to wrap things up for this was to do a hopefully interesting overview of the plot while also talking about some of the main themes that crop up in the story. And I do feel like plot and theme work well together, and let's be honest, nobody wanted a 5th video. I don't want it, you don't want, nobody wants it, okay? Like, we need to be done. Like, a 5th installment is going into Crazy Town. So yeah, we're not doing that. Yes, we're going to put both of those things together. We're going to try, at least. Okay, so for anyone who has clicked on this video without watching the previous 3, a quick summary. Middlemarch is a 19th century novel written in the 1870s, but the actual setting of the book is beginning in 1829. And it details just the daily lives of all the varied people living in this small town of Middlemarch, for which the novel is named, and how they all intertwine with each other in different ways. And I guess I should say, if you do not like or want spoilers, cease watching immediately. Don't watch this. I'm going to detail all of the things. And also, I have decided, unlike the other 3 videos, that I'm not going to rely as heavily on excerpts from the novel itself, which is, oh, it's so difficult for me. It makes me kind of sad, but I think I have enough to be going on with, enough to be talking about without also interjecting all of that for this particular video. And, you know, it'll leave a potential reader more to enjoy on their own. Okay, so the plot of Middlemarch revolves around, in most ways, around 3 different romantic couples, which I detailed in the character studies that I did. Dorothea Brooke and Edward Casaubon, Rosamond Vincy and Tertius Lydgate, and Fred Vincy and Mary Garth. Those are the three. Okay, so we meet Dorothea and Edward first in the novel, and they are, in my humble opinion, quite a mismatch. It's one of those, I don't want to watch the car crash and its aftermath, but I can't look away type of relationship trajectories. Okay, so Dorothea is an idealistic 19-year-old who is deeply religious and fairly naive, and she decides that the best choice of marital partner for her is someone who can be like a spiritual guide. It's not romantic. She has an extremely teacher-student understanding of what marriage will be. And a large part of that is her belief in wanting to make a difference in the world. That's so important to her. And she feels like if she marries someone who is contributing something really worthwhile to humanity and can also educate her about all of the religious ideology she is so invested in, but doesn't always have a ton of access to for different reasons, that's going to be just the absolute best scenario that she could get for marriage, right? Okay, so enter Mr. Casaubon. He is a scholar, and he is writing this, what would you call, a historical treatise, I suppose, and it's called The Key to All Mythologies. You know, very big name. Very religious, very serious, 30 years older than her, and she thinks this is the perfect man for all of her ambitions. He will spiritually elevate her, teach her, and she can assist him with his, this masterwork. And, he's beginning to struggle with reading and writing everything for it himself, and just contribute to something really meaningful, something that will have a legacy. And so they get married. Just incredibly, I have to say. And incidentally, she does have another suitor who is a much younger, more conventional neighboring landowner as well, like Mr. Casaubon is, and everyone expects her to accept him, and she does not. So, a lot of the plot around this marriage, and I mean, it's not the only one, but it's fine, we'll get to that, stems from the fact that both parties entered into this lifelong legal contract with completely unrealistic and uninformed ideas about who the other person was going to be. Dorothea thinks she's going to be both a scholastic partner and a spiritually elevated helpmate for this man who she thought was really worthy of that. This is a person who really deserves that kind of service from me, right? And Edward has not really considered Dorothea as a full human being, as many of the men in this book tend to do with women, and really put no more thought into this marriage than I need a godly woman who will help me with this all-consuming academic project. That's about it. It's very much about how much labor a woman can do for him, and he expects that, and that's about the end of it. So, He has no thought of her own ambitions, her own interests, and to be fair, Dorothea really helps him along in that. Like, she has this very strange idea that she will sort of alchemically morph in marriage into this ideal Christian wife. And in many ways, she's just not naturally made that way. Personality-wise, she's stubborn, she's very smart, and she wants to learn subjects considered pretty unsuitable for women during this time, and she's opinionated. Yeah, so these two people who have entered into this relationship very quickly find out that this is not what they thought it was going to be. Like, from the honeymoon, the rose-colored glasses are off, and we get this incredible scene with Dorothea just sobbing her heart out alone in a hotel room in Italy because she has begun to realize that this marriage is not going to be what she thought at all. And Casaubon quickly realizes, oh, this is a whole person, not just a servant. Well, damn, okay, like, and he like doesn't really know what to do with that. So much of their clash is with Dorothea trying so hard to just shrink and shove herself into what she thinks this man wants her to be, all while getting very little actual feedback from him. And their relationship is marked by all the things they don't say. So many things that they don't say it. And all the unmet expectations that are just allowed to percolate, unvoiced. And on the rare occasion that one of them has an outburst, and this, as I said, this doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it just creates this silent, festering tension. She is becoming bitter and trying to fight it, but just so disillusioned. And he manifests paranoia as he becomes more sickly and enfeebled. That's another whole thing that happens. He starts to suspect that Dorothea no longer respects his work the way that she did in the beginning, and eventually just totally disintegrates into delusion that she is in love with someone else. And all of this culminates in his sudden death a couple of years after their marriage, after which in his will it's discovered that he designed it so that Dorothea will only inherit his land and wealth if she never marries his second cousin, Will Ladislaw, who he came to believe she was secretly in love with. And as it happens, Will Ladislaw is desperately in love with Dorothea, but she's clueless. She has no idea. She's not thinking about that at all. She's so wrapped up in her own misery inside of this marriage that she doesn't even think of that until the will comes out. And she's like, oh, and like then it occurs to her, like, what? Okay. So Dorothea goes on this journey from young bride to widow pretty quickly, and then has to figure out how to navigate both this insulting will and how to move in the world in a way she had not anticipated. Widowed and reasonably independent. So while all of that is going on, we have another relationship developing, and this one is between Rosamond Vincy, daughter of the Middlemarch mayor, and the new doctor in town, Dr. Tertius Legate. So interestingly, we get pretty simultaneously, along with the Casaubons, another example of a fairly disastrous marriage, but in a completely different way. Like same story, different font kind of thing. So, whereas the implication with Dorothea and Edward is that this is a deeply disappointing and not sexually driven union, like, oh god, the descriptions of Dorothea like getting up in the middle of the night to transcribe or read passages for Edward on request are just tragic. Like, nobody's having sex in this marriage, okay? I feel so confident. So in opposition to that, Rosamond and Tertius's marriage is pretty much brought into existence because of sexual attraction. So, you know, Rosamond, as we find out immediately, is incredibly beautiful, which immediately captures Lydgate's, you know, Dr. Lydgate's attention, and he flirts with her, but with no plan of getting any deeper. He knows he's poor, he knows he can't really afford a wife, and when he becomes aware that maybe she is setting more expectation by this exchange that they've been having, he is very much, you know, oh shit, like that's not what I was thinking, like I need to tell her, like, so then when he tries to explain that to her, that, you know, in much more flowery language than what I'm going to say, but basically, I just thought we were flirting at a couple of parties and like having a good time because like you're cute, I'm cute, like kind of thing. So he tries to explain this to her, and she gets so upset, and he is so moved by how attached she has become to him and the expectation that she had of their exchanges, that, you know, that she had this expectation of marriage, that he kind of just loses his head in the parlor of her parents' house, and you know, she's crying and she just looks so wonderful, and he gets swept up and they kiss, and then he proposes to her. So it's very clear that they're both physically attracted to each other, and because of that, they rush into this marriage without a lot of forethought for how it will actually work. And unlike the Casaubons, it's very clear that they have an active sexual relationship, and that tends for a while to band-aid over some problems. So the plot with the two of them is driven forward also by this idea of their discovering each other, not in a good way, after they're already married, and realizing that, oh shit, this person isn't who I thought they were, but now they're stuck. And Dr. Lydgate realizes that Rosamond is not the pliant, docile beauty he assumed her to be, who will just do whatever he says. And Rosamond learns that Lydgate doesn't have any money, and their poverty is going to deeply impact the way that they live, which is in such a fashion as she is not happy with. Absolutely not happy with how they will have to live. And as a spoiled, self-indulgent person, she deeply, deeply resents this. So if the Casaubons' marriage is characterized by all the things they don't say to each other, you know, just these deep, wounded, festering silences, the Lydgates' marriage is defined by all the things they do say to each other and then regret. Theirs is not a quiet resentment. They have big, mean, angry arguments, and Rosamond really uses those to her advantage, Lydgate, for all of his flaws, and he does have them. I mean, he's a decent man. He's a decent guy. And he always feels awful at having lost his temper and said something really hurtful. And she seems to gain the upper hand most of the time by not having done so. She gets in there, she argues, but she just does not lose her cool the way that her husband does. And she is able to turn the arguments in her favor because he feels so guilty at having lost his temper, and then she, carries the day. It's hellish. It's just miserable. As the reader, you're sitting here just in the trenches of these horrific marriages that have yoked such incompatible people for superficial reasons. I'm really selling it, aren't I? You really want to read this book now. You're like, that sounds amazing. Yes, sign me up. But that brings me to the first thematic element of the book. Marriage. I just feel like obviously this is an overarching theme of the book. And I think it's just asking a lot of questions of the reader. And remember, initial readers would have been 1870s Victorian era people of Great Britain. And with these questions like, what makes a good marriage? Are the socially acceptable measuring sticks that we're using to unite people doing a good job? I think Eliot is pushing really hard on the conventional wisdom of marriage in this book, and basically saying, just because this is a legally and religiously sanctioned relationship doesn't mean that it's actually good or beneficial for the parties involved. The things we tell people will secure them a good marriage are not what we should be focusing on. Like, look at these train wrecks! And it doesn't surprise me that George Eliot would want to focus on this thematically, because she herself had a deeply unconventional relationship, and she was a romantic relationship, and she was continually socially punished and ostracized for that. And compared to these in the book, her relationship was a healthy meeting of equal minds who loved each other. But people couldn't accept it because her partner was already married, though he was happily and mutually estranged from his first wife, who had already gone on to another relationship with someone else as well and had children with this person. So, even so, people, they could not accept it. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that she would write a book that is very much a response to conventional ideas of marriage. So in contrast to these awful, depressing marriages, we also get some healthy marriages, both in Caleb and Susan Garth, and also eventually their daughter Mary Garth and Fred Vincy, brother to Rosamond. So in contrast with the other two that I just talked about, Fred and Mary do not rush to the altar. Fred would love nothing more. He's delirious for Mary, very obviously. And Mary also loves him. She does, but most unusually, she simply does not let that love sweep away all other considerations. So basically she's like, yes, I love you, but I can't marry you because you are a mess. You're a college dropout. You have no job, no apparent attempts at trying to find one, no motivation for basically anything, as far as I can tell. So I'd be an idiot to only marry you for love, which I agree with her, by the way. So their journey throughout the plot of this book is mostly just Fred trying to get his shit together, pay his debts, stop spending money that he doesn't have, figure out what he wants to do with his life, and just like learn how to be a mature, functioning adult person. And interestingly, throughout this process is the ever-present threat, I guess you would say, that Mary may go for somebody else. She has other prospects. Mr. Fairbrother, the local clergyman, is also in love with her, and he is much, much more together than Fred. Like, he looks a lot better on paper than Fred does. So this sort of acts as an impetus for Fred. For the first time, he realizes, I may not get her. The fact that she loves me may not be enough. I have to get it together or I'm gonna lose her. So, you know, thematically, I think the marriage threads that are woven throughout the book aren't so much just a marriage sucks, don't do it kind of message. I think it would be easy to maybe at a first glance think that that's what it's saying, but I think it's more of a entering into marriage deserves thoughtful contemplation because it's no small thing. I think she's arguing for, the author, George Eliot, is arguing for the true importance of marriage. You know, the deep value that the author does feel it has by showing how disastrous it is when you enter into it for really bad reasons. Sex, spiritual grandeur, expectations of labor, you know, gendered assumptions, filling a personal void, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Those are not good reasons to get married and sort of sully the institution. I think her message is that the sanctity of marriage has been cheapened by joining people who cannot create a meaningful relationship through it. It's a commentary on what is valued for marital relationships in society, and I think Eliot is quite clearly cutting in her assessment. We value the wrong things and force people into miserable unions that don't serve them well. Yes, so marriage is probably one of the most obvious themes, but I'd argue that a close second, or maybe even a tie for first, honestly, is religion, which will also lead nicely into further plot discussion. I have sort of purposely not touched very hard on anything religious in the previous 3 videos because I didn't want to spoil the thematic discussion of it, and it is a doozy. Eliot has some thoughts. She has got some thoughts on this, and I think we see these religious undertones throughout the various interconnected plot progressions for, you know, different pairs of people. So, as I mentioned, Dorothea is deeply religious, incredibly pious, almost puritanical, honestly, but also not well informed about the real world, right? She has all of these very high-minded, you know, magnanimous ideas about how to put into practice her Christian faith, but most of it isn't grounded in realities about how the world around her actually works. And this, you know, naivete leads her into this truly disastrous marriage, and she has to sort of reapply and recalibrate a lot of her religious energy as she moves through the book, and especially after her husband dies. But significantly, I think, she does not lose her faith, which I think would be understandable. You know, as a reader to almost kind of expect that she would just leave it behind given the experience that she has. But she doesn't. She has to reevaluate it and learn to move through the world in a different way, which, given her sort of final noble act, really important act of the novel, she intercedes in the disintegrating marriage of Dr. Lydgate and Rosamond in a really beautiful, touching, quite self-sacrificial way. And that seems a clear message to me. I don't think George Eliot is anti-Christianity. She did lose her own faith and was not practicing of anything in her adult life. She was much more deeply interested in ethics and philosophy, things like that. But I do think she is arguing for a different interpretation of Christian religion here. And again, think about how that would land for a first-time Victorian-era reader who has been given very rigid ideas and strictures about the correct Christian behavior. So that the people who are most truly Christian, or morally admirable in this book, are the ones who don't live it within the usual confines of Christian rules and procedures, feels not accidental to me in terms of thematic religious messaging, right? So, along with Dorothea, Mr. Fairbrother is another excellent example of that. He's a clergyman and, by all accounts, a very good one. But he is very unconventional. He gambles in a very controlled, non-problematic way to supplement his not huge income. He doesn't give long, overwrought sermons. He's very pragmatic about it all, and even openly admits to his friend, Dr. Lydgate, that his true passion for work might have been along a very different, more scientific path. And he's just not on fire for Christianity. It's very much a case of, I'm good at this thing, but I don't love it, I think. So, we get two instances in the novel of this genuinely sacrificial, morally noble behavior. And they both come from religiously affiliated, but unconventional individuals. So first there's Dorothea, as I mentioned, who intercedes in, a crumbling marriage, and then Mr. Fairbrother. So Mr. Fairbrother, as I already mentioned, is also in love with Mary Garth, along with Fred. And there is a moment in the second half of the book in which he realizes that Fred may not be able to rise to the occasion. And Mr. Fairbrother could either just let that happen, just not intercede, which would probably lead to his own future happiness. He feels reasonably sure that if Fred fails to get it together, Mary will not marry him, and he, as a consequence, will win her, and they'll probably get married. Or he could try to encourage Fred, kind of step in, if you will, in which case Fred will probably win Mary, who would prefer a reformed Fred as her first choice of partner. He also knows that. And so that is what Mr. Fairbrother does. It's just beautiful. It was interestingly, almost before he's realized that it's happened, he has had this entire exchange with Fred that's basically, look, dude, if you cannot stay away from this gambling billiards parlor place, you are going to lose her. Like, don't do it. She's worth it. You're better than this. And that moment is the dropping of the penny for Fred. He leaves, he very much has this eureka moment, not least because it's Mr. Fairbrother saying it to him, who he really respects. And he never again fritters away money that he doesn't have on frivolous gambling or anything else. And he and Mary get married and have a, happy life together, as we're told. So this is fascinating to me. The characters who get all the religious brownie points narratively, from the author, are the ones who are just sort of quietly, internally motivated, very atypical in terms of Christian expectation. So in contrast, the characters who are more publicly and performatively religious are the ones who, it is made very clear, are problematic in their theology. And I think the number one example of that is Nicholas Bulstrode, the town banker. Closely followed by Edward Casaubon, who I'll get to in a bit. So Bulstrode is deeply, deeply religious. He proselytizes and preaches to the people of Middlemarch very regularly. He is openly judgmental of people who appear to him to be sinful or morally weak. He is deeply convicted that he has done what God would want, and as such is being blessed by God. They wouldn't have had this terminology at the time, but it is like a kind of prosperity gospel, which is a term you can look up if you're interested. I think that's how Mr. Bulstrode sees himself. I did everything I'm supposed to do, and thus I'm receiving much favor from the Lord. Now, as it happens, this entire house of cards, if you will, comes tumbling down in the last quarter of the novel, because we learn that this entire reputation that he has built is quite a bit of a lie. He actually did some very questionable things earlier in his life, both in terms of business practices and his personal life with his first wife, who has now died. Basically, he just has a lot of skeletons in the closet that he has both been justifying to himself and desperately working to conceal. And it happens that a person who knew him very well during this less reputable portion of his life comes roaring back into it, back into the picture currently, and is perfectly willing to blackmail him with this knowledge. Blackmail the hell out of him. So this is the delightfully named Mr. Raffles. So suddenly, Mr. Bulstrode is being viscerally confronted with his past, and no matter what he does, he can't shut this guy up. And it all culminates in this incredibly subtle and intricate clockwork of events that lead to Mr. Raffles' death. I won't get into tons of details on that because it's actually very complicated, but basically he has died in such a fashion that it looks to the town as though Mr. Bulstrode has paid Dr. Lydgate, who everyone knows is in tons of debt, a handsome sum to finish off the dying alcoholic Mr. Raffles. And they are both just absolutely disgraced through this gossip. And this isn't actually the case. This is not actually what happened, but Mr. Bulstrode isn't blameless, and poor Dr. Lydgate is just the unfortunate recipient of monstrously bad timing. So it does look bad, and that's, that what the town is speculating about is not what actually happened, but it does look very sketchy. You can understand why they would think that was how this went down. And so then you also have Mr. Casaubon, who also has a very rigid and obvious faith, who is trying to bring to the world a particular ambitious theological argument through this work of scholarship that he's been for decades pounding away at, the key to all mythologies. And he's quite a sad figure, because as we learn, he has thrown his entire adult life into this project, but there are two big problems. Firstly, he is wholly preoccupied with the opinions, real or imagined, of other academic men, and is so paranoid that they are judging him or finding him wanting, that this perception of intellectual inadequacy kind of just dogs his every step, just influencing so much of what he does in a very negative way. It's not like those people who say things like, nothing motivates me more than thinking about my haters and how much they want me to fail. I'll show them. It is not that kind of energy. It is not that. It's much more like, I am so preoccupied with obsessing over what they think that I'm just going in circles and second guessing everything and rewriting everything and trying to research too much, etc., etc. It's making him spin his wheels, basically. Second problem that we are told by Will Ladislaw, who breaks this to Dorothea on her honeymoon, fascinatingly enough, is that Mr. Casaubon doesn't actually know any German. So he is not translating, reading, using a lot of relevant material that he would really need to make an academically cogent argument that isn't outdated. Yes. And I think a lot of the significance of this is really kind of lost on us as modern readers. I'll be honest, I kind of missed it. It's this very brief little moment in which Will is like, he doesn't even know German, and he doesn't explicitly lay out why that's a problem. It's very obvious that as the reader, you're just supposed to kind of understand how problematic this is. And I didn't. I had to kind of go back and figure that out. But it is a problem to say at this point in time that you want to publish this big, a manifesto on theology without actually looking into the latest publications of theological significance, which were in no small part being done by the Germans at this point in time. So you would need to either be able to translate the German yourself or have an assistant who could do that for you. So, but he's not doing that. So these are his big problems. And he dies so tragically and horribly, having accomplished nothing of significance. His manuscript is unfinished, with only his beliefs and his own paranoid delusions, both about his marriage and his life's work. That's all he has in the end. So, with both of these men, Bulstrode and Casaubon, we are shown people who are genuinely convicted in their faith. I think it would be easy, but incorrect, to say, oh, these are just religious hypocrites who don't really believe in what they say. The author wants us to denigrate them. But that's not it. I don't think that's what it is. It's so much more complicated than that, as is usually the case with George Eliot. I mean, look how big the book is, right? It's not going to be simple. They really do believe these things, Casaubon and Bulstrode. It's not just straightforward hypocrisy so much as their own unexamined personal hubris seeping into this true faith kind of without their realizing it, so that they are using their genuine Christian beliefs to bolster whatever it is that they want to do. So it's not that they're disingenuous believers, right? Like in quotes. It's that they use their true belief as justification for the decisions they most selfishly want. Particularly with Mr. Bulstrode. Oh, he is so good. I mean, we get pages and pages dedicated to his twisting his Christianity into whatever shape will justify him doing the thing he wants to do, even if it's not great. So, as with the theme of marriage, the religious theme of the book, or maybe themes of the book, are not just Christianity sucks, it breeds hypocritical people, don't do it. And again, like, I think that's very tempting, given that George Eliot has no particular ties to Christianity when she writes this. But I don't think that's what she's saying here. It's much more that Christianity can work for either good or ill, given a person's natural character, and, I think this is very important, purely chance circumstances. 50-50 shot based on a lot of different things that are uncontrollable and unpredictable, including good old human variety of behavior. So it is certainly not a satisfying landing on one side or the other. As with, the thematic material about marriage. For an author who is just incredibly wordy, I don't think there's any way that could not be. I mean, she just is. I mean, look at this doorstop. She is. She has so much to say. But for all of that, George Eliot is also deeply ambiguous, which is so interesting to me. She is not just going to come out and say, Christianity is always bad, or Christianity is always good. Marriage is always bad, or marriage is always good. She tends to leave things thematically open-ended. Choose your own adventure. I'm going to give you some examples that could argue the case either way, and you can have a think on it as the reader, which is so hard. That's so hard. I think both as the author, and it's frustrating for the reader as well, but for the author, this is just an absolute masterclass of show, don't tell. Which again, I think maybe a lot of people would kind of laugh at, like, she's not telling you a lot, she's telling you a lot, look at that book. But no, she really does. It really is show, don't tell to me. And ironically, maybe, ambiguity is another, the last of the big themes that I want to touch on. She has given you such a deeply ambiguous picture of human beings. Which I think is the point. I think that is the entire point. The characters themselves, the events, the decisions, there is no clear, this is what you should think about this thing for any of it. Even with the other thematic elements that I won't get to talk about. Oh, it's so upsetting. Money, illumination, science, love, politics. Oh my God, the politics. There just are no clear boundary lines drawn on any of it. She offers you up this absolute myriad of examples in one little small town, no less. For all of it, there are often these contrasting, conflicting things. It's understandable from both sides, and just leaves it at that. People are complicated. The world is complicated. There are no easy one-size-fits-all answers to any of this, to this, this thing called life. She doesn't do it. She's not going to do it. And it is so deeply unsatisfying. I think our brains just hate that. We want a nice, neat, tidy ending that gives us a clear message about what this is all for, and you just, you don't get it, really. She begins her novel with her prelude, discussing this image of sort of a mismatched woman, born into a time that doesn't allow her the full embodiment of all of her potential gifts. And she ends with an image of that same woman, still neutered to a degree, but also unknowingly influencing countless future lives in an unacknowledged, maybe unquantifiable way. And this is the only actual thing from the book I'm going to read. But the effect of her being on those around her was incalculably diffusive. For the growing good of the world is partly dependent on unhistoric acts, and that things are not so ill with you and me as they might have been is half owing to the number who lived faithfully a hidden life and rest in unvisited tombs. And that is the end. Oh, I mean, it's gorgeous, but it's it just isn't satisfying in a lot of ways. You know, it might be comforting to some, to a degree, but it certainly isn't edifying in the way that a lot of 19th century literature is. It's just this very ambiguous portrait of the world and a person's place in it. And you can either view this as deeply upsetting or motivationally bracing. It's very much up to the reader and what baggage or not they bring to this offering. But I think it's quite beautifully done, even if it's also very sobering to a large degree. But yeah, that ambiguity, that offering up of multiple possibilities and just leaving them there for the reader to do with them what they will is a not insignificant part of George Eliot's genius, I feel, and just why I love this book so much. So yes, those were all the big things I wanted to discuss with the themes and the plot. So thank you for letting me prattle on about it for as long and for as many videos as I have. It has been so wonderful. And now, end scene. Whatever will I ramble on about next, we'll see, right? So, thank you for being here, and I'll catch you in the next one. Have a great day, okay?